Hi, I'm Chrissy Marsh, and I have dressed up especially for all of you. Put on this little shimmery number just for you because I don't want to take you for granted, and I don't want to take you coming and listening to me and tuning into me every week for granted because I don't want this honeymoon phase to end between you and I. I want you to keep this relationship going. I want you to keep the magic alive, both for you and for me. So, little tip, I bet you've already guessed it. I am going to tell you about how to keep the honeymoon phase going and not letting it die. Now, I'd like to think with a 22-year marriage, I'm an expert, but you never say never. You've always got to keep learning and you've always got to keep growing. And that's what I'm going to discuss with you today. And that's what's so important is that you always continue to grow. I could sit back and go, been married 22 years. That's enough. That's great. The honeymoon phase doesn't have to end, whether you've been in a relationship 1, 2, 3, or 5 years. You don't have to ever stop being in the honeymoon phase. I think it's a really interesting fact that just say you've been going out with someone 5 years, she dumps you tomorrow, you're on your ass. Would you go into the next relationship with the same amount of effort and energy you're putting into your current relationship? Would you up it? Would you have to make more of an effort? Would you not sit around on the couch every night of the week and make an effort to take this new person out to dinner? So these are the little things that I really want us all to think about and think about what we can do to keep life exciting, to keep a relationship exciting. Whether it's 1 or 50 or 60 years like my parents, I've got a pretty good example ahead of me. And I see what my mum and dad do every day. I'm not talking life is a fairy tale here. Of course, there's going to be many ups and downs in life. Of course, it's not going to all be fluff and bubble like it is when you first meet someone. And there are going to be hard realities that you face as a couple and in a relationship. But it doesn't mean you need to take away that honeymoon phase. And let me show you how. Or no, not let me show you. Let's explore how. I see this day in, day out with so many relationships, so many of my friends, family, people that you're around. It's so bleedingly obvious when people start to get super comfortable, when people start not to care or bother as much in a relationship. And I'm not just talking, everyone thinks, oh, when the honeymoon phase finishes, it means less sex, less. Obviously, I think physical contact is exceptionally important in any relationship. And obviously, to keep a relationship alive, when you first met, it's that physical attraction. It's, that butterflies in your stomach, the reason, you want to see that person 24/7. And I think it's really important to maintain that regardless of, how tired, how exhausted, how disconnected both of you might seem. One person's traveling, one person's here, or one person's totally exhausted. I think to make that effort with each other physically is exceptionally important, but that's just not what the honeymoon phase is about. The honeymoon phase is a lot of things. It's, if I could give these 4 tips to you, and I think any relationship will never get stale if you both just concentrate on these 4 things. I think the honeymoon phase is a lot more than just sex. I think if you don't implement these different facts that we're going to talk about and explore, that the relationship is really in effect dying. The relationship, without you even realizing it, is on a slow decline. And I think this is the most important thing. People just think the honeymoon phase relates to physical and sex and what's going on there. But, obviously we're very complex beings. Our needs are so much more. And the whole honeymoon phase is that excitement in the relationship, is that how you feel about each other, how you relate to one another, how you respect one another. And it's interesting that, some people go down that path of honestly believing that they don't need to make the same amounts of effort in all different areas once they get comfortable and complacent in a relationship. I must say I would never in my life think that I am good enough and I'm amazing enough to keep anyone without making an effort. I think everything in life, you can't expect a beautiful plant like the one behind me to keep growing if it's not watered and nurtured and given sunlight. And I think that's exactly how you've got to look at a relationship. A relationship needs to be nurtured and fed and worked on, because so much in life will come at you. So much at life, whether it's good, whether it's bad, and you need to adjust and you need to grow within that relationship. And that is what the honeymoon phase means. The honeymoon phase means continuing that excitement with each other, continuing that love with each other, continuing that growth as a couple. And I just think that is what the honeymoon phase is, and that is what we're going to unpack today. My parents have been married 60 years. I've been married 22 years, and I do believe that no relationship is perfect. I do think what can be perfect is the honeymoon phase, or the way that you adjust, pivot and move on in terms of a relationship. I think, never losing that curiosity of that person. Remember when you first met, the questions that you used to ask, you wanted to find out about them. You were curious about the person they are. Now you think, oh, well, I've been with them 22 years. I know all about their childhood, or I know all about, what they're doing at work. But sometimes, it might be a different environment. You might be out at a little restaurant. You might be just the two of you, and you might ask some different questions, how he felt towards his mother growing up. And at that point in time, it might be a totally different opinion to when you first met. So I think the curiosity in each other is really important, is not assuming that you know everything about them, and keeping that level of interest in the other person. I think that's a really lovely thing to do. Okay, so keeping the honeymoon phase is about banging on the sofa, banging on the kitchen bench, banging anywhere you want to. No, it's not. It's about physical, keeping that physical intimacy. And that's not just about sex. It's not just about being in the bedroom all day, every day, like you were when you first met each other. It's not just about being in a bedroom together. It's not just about that physical. It's actually the physicality. It might be a hug, it might be a kiss, it might be, that look when someone's in the kitchen. It's all the little physical elements that make up a relationship. It might be the holding of the hand that you did when you first started dating, and not being predictable. Keep that curiosity, keep those surprises. Oh no, we stopped holding hands years ago. Well, wouldn't that be a nice little surprise? All of a sudden start holding your partner's hand. Wouldn't it be great? I'm trying to think of something cute, physical. Oh, why don't I give you a massage tonight without expecting, sex? Why don't, so being unpredictable. Like, it's pretty predictable to say, oh, let me give you a massage tonight, and then always wanting sex. So be unpredictable and say, no, I actually just want to give you a massage tonight. So it's not only about keeping the physicality in a relationship, it's also about not becoming predictable and boring. Show up one day out of the blue. I've come to take you out to lunch today. Or no, tomorrow night, I'm not telling you what we're doing. And you've gone and booked his favorite movie. Like for Johnny, I know something that would really turn him on is to say, let's go out to the golf driving range together. It's not something that I think, oh, wow, I'd absolutely love. But remember when you're in that honeymoon phase, you used to do things like, and this is a great one, Johnny actually went horse riding one and only time, obviously in the honeymoon phase, trying to impress me, decided he'd go horseback riding, absolutely useless on the horse. But it's things like that, is doing something you necessarily wouldn't want to do. Yeah, and I have got a confession to make. I did one of those as well. I took up surfing because I knew he loved surfing. And of course, I'm in the honeymoon phase. Do you think I've surfed since? No, but I still do go to the beach with him. But when I was out there and I was paddling out the back, and all of a sudden he caught a wave in, and I'm like looking around, I'm stuck out in the inky blue, and there's just, Jaws music playing in my head. I decided that no, I'm getting the hell out of there. But that's the curiosity. That's the things that we did in the honeymoon phase to make it exciting, but you just wanted to do that for someone. So what stops you wanting to do that? You shouldn't. You still should be doing those little things for each other that mightn't necessarily be your cup of tea. Like if your husband or wife has a favorite restaurant, or, the person you're dating loves a certain sport, try doing that with them rather than sending them to do that on their own with their friends, maybe making the effort and going along to something that you wouldn't necessarily do. Because I can bet you any money you used to do that in the early days of a relationship. And that's what you got to think about here. It's not just the honeymoon phase, the physicality of a relationship, the need and the want, but you'd be surprised if you go off and, you know, do that golf driving range, something that necessarily wouldn't want to do, then next time they're going to do something that you want to do. It's keeping that alive. It's keeping things interesting. It's also not being predictable. At what point do we stop being that flirty, cute little person that when you first started going out with someone to become the person that you only tell them your complaints and I don't feel well and I'm tired from work and I've got too much on and, I'm sure you felt a lot of those things within the honeymoon phase, but you're back to that flirty little self. You're always trying to win them over. You're basically, wanting them to fall in love with you. Isn't that what a relationship is, falling in love with each other? And when did we stop doing that? And that's what the honeymoon phase is. It's obviously, keeping those cute little flirty things about you, not just giving complaints, not just giving problems, I found a lot of the time, especially when, you are apart from someone, it might be, your partner's traveling. I know when Johnny was living in China and I was living here, I could have easily been on the phone to him, telling him everything that was wrong with my life at the time. And, struggling with the 3 kids, 3 different schools, this and that. I would always keep it quite upbeat and positive, because you don't just want to fall into that trap of no longer caring, no longer bothering, no longer being that interesting person. And I'm not saying, paint a false reality, but sometimes the complaints that you held back on in the honeymoon phase might be well worth hanging back on now to keep that excitement, to keep that relationship alive. I think all of these things combined, and if you look at yourself, remember that first date you went out with, what did you wear? What did you dress up? What did you look like? Every time you saw them, I'm like, I would never wake up, in bed with the foul smelling breath. I'd get up early in that relationship, go and clean the teeth. So what should change? Oh, I'm spitting. Maybe that. But really, what should change? There's no reason. Are you so comfortable and confident within yourself that you think you just don't need to make any effort anymore? You don't need yourself to be interesting. You can only give them complaints. You don't need to have a physical relationship anymore. All of those things are not necessary because you're such an amazing and interesting person, and you don't have to do that. Like, that's what love is, continuing to grow with people. And haven't you heard it so many times where people say, we just grew apart? And growing apart a lot of the time can just mean one person or maybe both of you just stopped making an effort. I know that if you want to keep a relationship alive, and it doesn't need to just only be, boyfriend, girlfriend type of relationship, any relationship, even if it's your relationship with your parents. But it is something that you've got to consider, that you make it a priority. Make it a priority that, you continue to make an effort physically in the bedroom, physically with your appearance, physically being interested in that person. And it's not just all about sex. It's all those little intimate moments that when you're starting a relationship and that continues a relationship that makes a person feel special. Think about what you used to do when you made them feel special. Okay, so let's go back to this one point. Today, gone. You're dumped. You are out on your ass. That person is no longer interested in a relationship. What would you go and do? I'll go and lose 5 kilos like Khloe Kardashian, the breakup body. Well, why didn't you do that before finally breaking up? I'm going to go and reinvent myself and get a new haircut and feel good about myself again. Well, don't wait to be broken up with to do that. Do that now. So there's all these little things that if you got dumped tomorrow that you might turn around and change. I'd stop complaining to my partner about my bad job. I'd go and change jobs. Well, do it now. don't wait till the honeymoon phase is over and the relationship is dead and buried because you didn't make the effort. Make the effort now and continue and love and grow. I look at my parents, they're not the same people they met 60 years ago. They are still together. And I'm not saying relationships are perfect because I'm sure everyone drives other people nuts. Yes, you do have some bad fights and arguments, because if you tell me you're in a relationship where you don't fight or argue ever, well, then I don't think you are in a healthy relationship. I think it's, unimaginable to think you could never not fight. You can never, like, that's just unrealistic. If you say, oh, I don't fight at all, well, then you're certainly not in an honest relationship. And I think the most important thing in a relationship is honesty. And when you do fight and when you do argue, it's the way in which you argue, I believe, keeps that honeymoon phase. It's not, you think when you first met someone, if your first fight you had with them, the first argument, you were very respectful of them. You weren't going to just tear them to shreds or physically or, verbally abuse them, out of control. And I think that's really important in keeping that essence and that beautifulness in a relationship, is not arguing and going below the belt and really tearing someone down, because it's very hard to rebuild that person and very hard to rebuild that relationship and very hard to get back to that honeymoon phase when you've absolutely torn someone to shreds and degraded their personality, annihilated their character. That's very, very difficult. So a big tip for me is fight wisely or argue wisely, and really, keep in mind those fundamentals that you love in that person. And you're not wanting to, deride them and, derail them as a person. It's the makeup that makes it fun. It's the effort. And it's not even an effort, but it's the curiosity that you've got to continue within a relationship. And it doesn't mean getting done up like this every night of the week, but it means in life, make an effort if you think the person's worth it. And if they're not, get out of that relationship. Maybe you need to move on tomorrow. Or you can go back to one of my former episodes, which is on toxic relationships. That'll help you how to get out. But guys, really, if you think anyone can appreciate or benefit from any of my advice today, please forward it on to them. Make an effort in your relationship. Make an effort to connect with people. We're in a disconnected world. We can all stay on our iPhones, iPads, TVs. At least TV, you're all watching it together. But do something to connect, be together, keep the honeymoon phase going. And it's not just in the bedroom. Was that a really bad wink? I'm not a very good winker. But it can be just in the bedroom if that's what you need. Good luck. Go to it. Bang on the sofa. Okay, stop, Chrissy. That's enough.